is called Summon the Sea, and we're gonna do a little script that gives us power over the ocean, and we will be working with kind of just this ocean island little thing that I made here, just like a little islandscape. I tried to do a super quick paint job on the side of my cliff here, and the way that our script is going to work is we're gonna click anywhere on the terrain itself, on the terrain surface, and we're going to summon the sea level to meet that position. We've also got some fog in here made by a particle emitter. I put a link to that in our Discord channel. The article behind that, it's here in our knowledge base. It's called Make Rolling Fog, and it's different than the property fog. It's an actual particle emitter. That's out here and kind of makes these makes another type of kind of volumetric fog, and it's pretty cool. You can dial in different effects, and kind of make a different fog experiment. If we've got time, at the end of today's tutorial, we'll unpack this a little bit more and do and kind of potentially do something with it as well. Move around the fog, summon the fog. But we're going to start with summoning this sea level. So the basic situation is that we have a script here that accepts an on-press event, just like we've been doing in the 30 days of symmetry. Here we are on day 23, and almost every day, or at least every other day, we've worked on a script that involves an on-press event on some object. But today, we're going to bring that event. Right here into place it on the terrain, so that when we click on it in the terrain, we get these. We get the water level, and you'll notice that it actually takes time to get up to that level. If I click way out here, it takes a while for it to kind of come in and gradually progress. So we're actually using we're not just setting the value, we're actually animating to that value. The other thing that's kind of cool is you have this, which is called kind of caustics, which is the underwater look, which is really wonderful. And we'll jump here into this in VR here in a second. But then you've also got kind of the effect of these particles underwater, and the combined effect is actually pretty awesome. It was kind of a nice side effect that I hadn't planned for when I sort of mixed the fog with the water, and yeah, it's definitely a beautiful little place to hang out in. If you want the water to go away, you just click over here, and the water level will animate down to that level. So let's take a look at it in VR, and then we'll unpack it and then we'll build it from scratch. So I'm going to go into VR mode, and then I'm just going to start from the stopped position and then click VR. Actually, let me get you a monoscopic view here. We'll make a new screen display output here. Oh, here. Excuse me. I need to make my HMD camera display visible. There we go. That should do it. So let's take a look. And just like the on-press event works in non-VR mode, where my mouse click can set the water level, the laser on my VR controller will activate that value. Will activate the on-press event that is on the terrain, and so I can come all the way up here to this peak and click. As long as I'm within the right range, there we go, and here comes the water, and I'm left only with a little place to stand. And in fact, the value actually animates over and comes back because it's using a particular easing curve, and that easing curve is that easing curve is elastic ease in, so the water kind of overshot and eased in here. So we've only got this like little. So to get the water to go back down, I'm gonna need to swim down here, and it's really pretty lovely under here. Need to swim down here and click. I'm gonna click the interact button on my VR controller here on the beach surface or the sand surface, the terrain, down at this low level, and here comes the water, and it slowly kind of reaches the ground. And so I could sit here and kind of work the different water levels. So it's actually really pretty simple. We're going to first just set the value directly, and then we're going to learn the animation. The animation script is just the 2 lines of code that allow it to kind of go from its current level to smoothly interpolate up to its next level, it's kind of wonderful to sit around in these little terrain pockets and kind of adjust the water level. And go out for a swim. All right, so let's take a look at how we built this. You can see my fog kind of at a nice distance here, this sort of pocket of fog sort of hanging over that valley. You can click anywhere on the terrain and bring up the water with this rolling fog. Very cool. So let's see what we have going on here. It's actually really pretty simple, and it all pretty much lives. You can basically the VR rig is like the preset VR rig, and it just has the interact script nodes on the left and right. I actually built this one from a beginning rig, so it could just be a preset rig with the interact buttons on the grip triggers, and then fly on the index trigger. So that's the preset rig, and then it's just pointing and clicking and interacting with the terrain surface. So how do we put an interactable kind of the interactable attribute to get the on press event onto the terrain? Well, let's check it out. So the way to do that was here. When you click on the terrain space, you've probably been tinkering around with the physics of the terrain space. You've maybe messed around with the time scale of our world. Ocean, obviously, we'll be dealing with this, and you've got this object called terrain, kind of a sub-object of terrain space, and underneath it is where we've added the interactable attribute, and which means that on the terrain itself we have an on-press event. So if you click on that, you'll see the script that we wrote, and we are, since we're going to animate that level, we are basically taking our old level and our new level and storing those so that we can get a comparison between the old level and the new level. And I'll explain why as we dig this open, but the animation code will just take it from it. It'll just by default take it from its current level to whatever new level you pass in. But I decided that I liked, and we're going to see this as we write this. I decided that I wanted I wanted to kind of scale the amount of time that it takes by how big the difference is in the how the old height and the new height. So if it had the water way out here, and then I flew all the way up here and clicked it, I wanted that to go gradually, as opposed to taking some static amount of time, like 2 seconds, in which case it would like burst up really quickly. So yeah, so what we're doing is kind of storing an old and a new, and then recognizing, oh, if it's a long distance, take longer, and if it's a small distance, take shorter. So that's the amount of time that changes on this difference of level. So we calculated a level difference based on the new level, the new water level, and the old water level. We use an interpolation between these called an elastic ease-in, which means that it like the values like overshoot. When we were standing at this pinnacle up here and I pressed it, the water level didn't just come up slowly to that level. I used an elastic ease-in, which meant that the water level went above and then came back down. I thought that was kind of, after trying a few different interpolation curves, I decided here on elastic ease-in. Yeah, so I liked elastic ease-in because it kind of felt more watery. That water kind of has that waving effect. Yeah, and so this is what we're going to be building here. We basically it really comes down to kind of these two and this line right here, and then we do this little scaling effect right here where we kind of like change the difference in the level. So let's go ahead and build this from scratch. I'm going to just press save, and then I'm going to create a new space. And what I'm going to do is put a little bit of terrain in the space. So I'm going to come down to the terrain tool, and I'm just going to raise up like what's going to become a mountain. So you'll want to, you can, if you want, use kind of these irregularity options and enable them, which will sort of like make your items, your terrain kind of come up in a noisy way. So the raise, basically you're gonna, by using your mouse wheel or sliding this toggle, you're controlling the radius at which you're gonna kind of apply this raise effect. Hardness is like how steep the edges are in a sense. So you can think of it almost like a drop off. Irregularity options is great for kind of getting kind of more chaotic, kind of noisy effects, and you can tinker with these values to get kind of these more kind of craggy edges and stuff. And kind of mix, you'll want to kind of change the seed as you work through. Maybe lower some, kind of cut into these. And then if you want, eroding sort of evens out levels. If you kind of want it a bit more rounded, it's totally up to you. There's all kinds of stuff you can do with terrain. The other thing that you can do is, you've got diffuse paint, material paint. You can move objects around this. You can really build up some complexity. It takes a little time and some a little bit of artistic play. So yeah, here we go. We can kind of paint over the entirety of this thing and then we blur it away. One of the things I thought I always see is really bleached out, or maybe it's just bird droppings up on the peaks, kind of an ocean islands and stuff. So if you spent a while with these tools and with various materials, you can paint on different materials and whatnot. You can start to get a real pretty cool look. I'm just going to put enough in here that we have kind of a little bit of ambiance. So let's do a little bit more blur. So we're gonna find a little pocket in here that we like, but let's kind of a little pocket of terrain that makes the gives us a lot of variation in the kind of the ocean line. And we can change, we can change the sun angle to kind of better enjoy the shadows. But what we're gonna do is click on the ground, and then we're gonna now that we've kind of got ourselves like an island to work with, now it's time to bring in some ocean and kind of just the first thing to do is just make it the value visible true. And now we've got kind of a basic water level. It defaults to 2, and it goes down as low as 0.25. Kind of after that, it's the kind of effect is nothing. But if you want to start it at 0.25, that's good. That's sort of like the kind of like a tidal marsh that you know, like a mud flats that you'd walk across or something. And then imagine what it's going to look like when you bring up or take a preview in a sense of what kind of pockets and stuff you're going to get as you come up. This is going to look pretty cool. You can have some options here. So what we're going to do is start off with the water level. It can be basically anywhere because we're going to be setting it once we get in here in script, but I'm going to start it like way down so that we can tinker with it. So the main, since we're going to be creating an interactive event on the terrain, we can tinker with it with just our mouse to begin with, and then just drop a VR rig in and it should be good to go. So the way to add this interactivity to the terrain is we're going to select the terrain and go to its properties, and under the terrain object here, not the terrain space, but the terrain object here with this little icon. So this terrain right here is where we're going to add the interactable attribute. So we're going to click right here, and we're going to click interactable, which creates this little, if we expand it down, creates this attribute, and on it is this onPress event. So let's go ahead and use the onPress event, and in essentially one line of code or two, we're going to be able to click and get water at that height. And so let's figure out how do we get a hold of the water height. So the water height is controlled by ocean's water level properties. So basically we need the ocean.water level. So just like any other interaction that we've built to this point, we can bring in the ocean icon, and this gets a hold of this ocean object. And it's going to find it by the unique ID. It's kind of the symmetry social security number for each object. So the ocean dot water level is what we're going to set. So we'll say ocean dot lowercase w, uppercase L, ocean dot water level equals. Now, what does it equal? Well, how do we know what the height is of this point that I've clicked? I'm clicking on the terrain and all over the place, but I don't know what the height is. Well, fortunately, we have this argument, this thing which comes into our onPress event. We have these things that we can work with, which are very useful. The one that we're going to be using is seg. So seg is the segment that extends from essentially the camera to the click point when it's when you're in 2D and you're working with a mouse cursor. It's the point of intersection. So that point out in the three-dimensional world where I'm clicking on that terrain, that intersection point. So the segment is a line that is starts at the camera, which is what we're moving around, starting at that camera and ending at that point on this line. So let's just take a look at. So there's a point. Basically, it's 2 points. The seg has 2 points underneath it. It's a line segment, so it has the first point, which is considered the point at the camera, which you could imagine is quite literally this number. That would be x75, y13, -30, z30, -30. That's sort of the start point, and then the end point of the segment is where my mouse cursor is hitting, which is somewhere out in the world. So let's actually just print it to see what we're looking at. Print, and the way you get that endpoint is seg, lowercase g, get, uppercase E, up for end, and then uppercase P for point, open close parentheses, and that will return, that will return the endpoint. And let's just put this in a string. So we're gonna say to string, which will make this ready to be printed. So to string, which is lowercase t and lowercase s in this case, because it's kind of an internal function, a conversion utility function. And then we're passing into that little, so we're stringifying what we get back here. It's like a full point. This is kind of just a safety measure. Not everything that you try to print is going to be printable. And so let's, for the time being, we'll comment this out because we haven't finished this line. Let's just print every time we press. Let's go and print to string the end point of this segment. So that line from the camera to my cursor. So let's press play, and you can see that I'm getting an X, a Y, and a Z, and the Y is 14 meters. And let's say I click a little bit lower, that's 3 meters, and out here that's 0. So indeed, where I haven't raised the terrain, Y is 0. So now you're getting an idea of, okay, we just want that. If I figure out what this Y, this height level is, up there it's much higher, it's 32. If I can get a hold of that Y value, I can now set the water level equal to that. Awesome. So let's do exactly that. So where's our script? Our script lives on the terrain. So let's click on the ground, open up the property editor, and you can see that the terrain has this little pink piece of code. It's got this object script. We can right click anywhere where there's the pink thing and hit edit code. So over here, or down there, or click on the interactable on press. They all will open up this guy. So this is the on press event for the terrain, the terrain here. So we now can comment out this print thing. We don't need to be printing each time we press, but we know exactly the thing that we want, which is the Y value of this endpoint. So I can say that I'm going to uncomment ocean.waterLevel. Ocean.waterLevel, I'm going to set it equal to seg get endpoint dot Y. And now when I press play, the water level will set instantaneously to that level, which is pretty cool. But you immediately, if you have any sense of aesthetic, no, I'm just kidding. Immediately it begs, I want this to animate. This could be kind of cool, but you're immediately going to want to animate. So that's the thing that we're going to learn next. But this is pretty cool. We can immediately do things with that seg get endpoint. That, and you'll also, and we could do something like this, later or even in a further tutorial. But that seg get endpoint, we're getting the Y value of it. But you saw us printing it. What a cool way to potentially tell things where to go, position things. You could clone an item and say, go here, go there, and it all happens on that click event. And so the same thing will happen in VR. So let's actually let's take a look at our VR situation and look at it without the animation at this point. We'll put the preset rig out here. We'll put it out. Let's actually rotate it to face in towards our island. I'm not going to be blinded by too much sun. And on that preset rig, I'm going to make it so we can fly around a lot faster. This is always a whatever. Maybe this is a pro tip or an intermediate pro tip. Under the VR rig, under the index trigger, you can come in under fly and edit code and just add some numbers to this value. We default it to 4. But I like to fly a little faster, so I bring it up to like 24. So if I go into VR now, and let's just put this, for everyone's sake, I'll put this HMD. I'm going to add a new screen display so you guys are seeing monoscopic. Oh, yep, here we go. So, and we are in VR mode. My controllers are I'm using a Vive, and my controllers are on. My left hand is flying, and my right hand grip trigger, since it's interact, or the grip trigger on the left hand, is able to interact with the terrain. As long as my laser, which I think has a 10-meter limit, can reach intersect with the terrain. So you can set that intersection length longer, and then you could sort of kind of lord over the space in an interesting way. So what do we have here? We've just got this kind of immediate thing. So what we're going to want to do is get that animation going. Wanted to try one more thing though. You can imagine you could do an on pressing event, which could be interesting. And so instead of on press, on hover, excuse me. So while our laser hovers over the terrain is when we set the water level, which could be interesting. So what you would do to do that is open up an on hover event and basically do the same thing here. Except I'm not sure. I don't think we actually get seg. So hold off on that one. I'm not sure if we get the actual seg value there. To be determined. We'll follow up with that one, but that could be interesting when you're hovering and you're just sort of waving the wand. On pressing, you could do it. We definitely get seg on pressing, so you could kind of control the water level there. In fact, that would be, I should be able to just copy this in, and we can see what that looks like. So I can hold down the controller, and you can see that I can set the water level each kind of frame, which is kind of cool because I can actually, it'll follow me now. It'll follow that seg kind of as I move, which is interesting. I have to first intersect. I'm not able to accomplish it here. I have to first intersect with the ground to like get that to cause that on pressing event. But this is kind of cool because I'm sort of like the something very Poseidon-like here, like Lord of the Ocean, where I'm like setting, just like setting the water value and not even animating. It's like I control the whole ocean. Anyway, so that's two different ways that you can see it, and so let's go make a third. We'll make that animation value, that animation effect. So to animate a value, we need to learn the animation script. I'm going to jump out of VR mode for just 1 second, and then I'm also going to toggle off our HMD camera display, just make it not visible so that we don't jump into the VR rig. Perfect. So I've got that ability again extends to the cursor, that pressing, which is pretty cool. If I come up here, it's kind of fun. So let's do the animation value. So let's get rid of our pressing event, and just so we kind of keep it straightforward. What we're going to do is take the new value and animate from our current value up to that. So the way to do that, and we have under Learn, you go to the scripting cheat sheet. Just look at this level here. Scripting makes you magic. There's a handful of things in here. Changing, like animating properties, and I'll show you a few things here. Scripting clipboard, some of our favorites. So I recommend looking at this, and we'll actually go to world properties. I've actually even built this one right in. So animate sea level rise. So we can literally copy this, and we're going to copy and paste this one in, but And again, that's at support.symmetry.com under the knowledge base. And scripting makes you magic, the scripting reference. And this is the scripting clipboard. And you can access it out through here, the scripting cheat sheet. And go up one level and go to here, scripting clipboard. There's a lot of fun things in here where you can kind of like, you'll want to, just so you know, you'll want to take this, see the example setup so that you know the context by which we're using these, because you'll have to recontextualize them when you use them. So anyway, we'll go back to symmetry. We've got the on our clipboard, and I'm gonna paste this in, and we just need to make one change. And see, this is where you'd need to know from the setup example that right now we need to, instead of saying space get ocean, we just need to actually talk to our ocean property. So we need to affect, the get water level needs to come off of this variable ocean. So space get ocean was a different context for accessing ocean. So this is the place where we're going to get rid of these values. So what we want to do is take ocean and put it in here where we have space get ocean. And where there's space get ocean here, we're going to paste this in. This is actually going to change entirely. So this is going to change entirely. So let's understand our animator code. So first what we need to do is get the ocean. And we're not going to do this. This is what we did last time. This is where we explicitly and directly immediately set the ocean's water level to this seg get endpoint.y. So we can either comment this out or delete it altogether. I'm just going to comment it out. We're no longer trying to print our endpoint values, which we did earlier, and we're no longer going to run this. What we want to do is set up an animation. And an animation is set up by 2 or 3 lines of code. And it looks as follows. You're going to create a clip, and this is the equivalent of creating like a little key clip when we've like animated values on the timeline. You also learned how to do that under Intro to Basics, keyframing with timeline. We're basically going to do that by script. We're going to create a little key clip, and we basically just say, at what and how much time is it going to take to go from what to what, and what property are we animating? What property are we animating? Where are we headed in terms of its value, and how long does it take to get there? And then one other thing, which is, what kind of interpolation curve do you want me to follow? How do you want me to ramp between these values? So the first thing is we're going to create the clip. So we have to say clip equals. And then we need to get animator and get key clip. Get animator, create key clip. And this is true. This create key clip is true for anything other than a transform property. If you're changing the transform property of some object, you're going to use a different thing, and that's all spelled out in those documents that I was just pointing you at. But what you're going to do is get animator, create key clip. Create key clip wants you to pass in a property. So not this thing, not ocean.water level, but what we want is ocean's water level property. And so if we click on the ocean, it's not the water level value itself, it's the overall property. It's sort of like the container for this, and you'll see that spelled out in these documents as well. So I'll come back here and let me just show you so that you have. So I teach you to fish here. If you look here, we've got a link at the bottom on animating values. So you could also just search here for animating properties, but everything will be spelled out for you here. And for example, we're talking right here about getting the property, animated values property object, not the value itself. Okay, so you can read over this, but the idea is we need to grab the container that we're going to work with, the water level property, not setting the water level the ocean dot water level. We're not setting the actual value, we're setting the property. It might be a little confusing at first, but the idea being, as long as it's any property other than a transform property, you can basically write the following. Like ocean, instead of ocean dot water level, you would say ocean colon lowercase g and then uppercase w, uppercase each word after that. So the g will be lowercase and then everything after that will be. So as an example, I could say ocean get color property, ocean get visible property, lowercase g, uppercase v visible, uppercase p property, all one word, and then I could toggle whether the ocean is visible or true. Directional light colon get active property, directional light colon get ambient light bleed property, shadow penumbra size get shadow penumbra size property. So that's the property that we're going to animate. Anyway, so enough on that. The point being, first we need to get a hold of our ocean, just like we were going to do if we were going to set it directly. Get a hold of our ocean by dragging in ocean, and we've got the object here of ocean. And then we're going to say clip is get animator, create a key clip, and inside of the parentheses, passed into this function of create key clip, we need to pass in a property, and that property is going to be our ocean get water level property. Sweet. So now we're ready to tell the animator what we want to do. And so the way that works is we need to pass in, we type clip colon add key, and so that's like the keyframe, and what that means is that 2 seconds from our current time, whenever this script runs, as soon as this thing runs, when we press the button, when we press the terrain, this script runs. 2 seconds from now, I want to animate up to the ocean dot water level +2, and we're going to change this, but that would be fine. That would be interesting. This is the ocean's current water level, and then add 2 meters. So the effect of this, and this is just the stuff we pasted in, this would actually just sort of, and we can watch it happen, this will mean that the ocean animates up 2 meters every time I click. It doesn't go to the point where I'm clicking. It doesn't go to my cursor. It goes just 2 meters every time I click it, because it's going up to the relative to the ocean dot water level currently, and then adding 2 meters. So this is the amount of time it should take, and then so that's a time value. So you need to type in seconds parenthesis 2 parenthesis or whatever amount of time you want to put in here. Yeah, and then here is where we want to set our next level. So we could just put in a static value like 10, and I can press this, and it'll animate over 2 seconds to the value of 10. But when I press it again, it's still at 10. So what we want is to put in a variable amount. So this is the point where seg getEndpoint.y comes in handy. So let's go ahead and copy that in. And our .y is a single dimensional value. It's just a height value. And so now we have this. Now we have it set up so that it's going to interpolate from its current value and its current moment across 2 seconds. It's going to reach this this value, the height at which we pressed it. So let's check it out. 2 seconds. 1, 2. And if I'm not mistaken, our default interpolation is linear. So you can see that it rises pretty robotically, pretty mechanically. And so there is a bunch of key interpolators available to you. So let's I'm going to write this out, and then, because it's a mouthful, interpolator, clip, set key interpolator, and then here is where we're going to set the type of interpolation. So these 3 lines are going to be the 3 lines of your animation. So This is the place where we're going to change key interpolator, and we could type in smooth with a capital S. Oops, excuse me. Oop, there. And this should rise slightly differently. Maybe, I think smooth might be deep. No, see that kind of creeps in a little bit less mechanically than I think the default at linear. Let's try like exponential ease in. So it moves quickly and then slows down as it eases into the value. That's actually kind of nice. I don't think I tried that one. You can also do elastic ease in, and that kind of bounces, which is a bit aggressive. But I was using this in a different way. So, where's the list of these? Well, you can find it two ways. One, I can press F1 on set key interpolator, and you'll see the key interpolator. This takes you to the docs. I pressed F1 here, takes you to the symmetry docs, and you see all the types that you have available to you. They also exist here. If you've created a key track, you can right click between the two key frames and see the interpolation list. But yeah, if you press F1, F1, and then click on the key interpolator, you'll see all of those available to you. So feel free to tinker with those, but let's take a look. We've got a lot of the pieces that we need to get our animation going and kind of tune it in, kind of dial it in, so to speak. So I like the exponential ease in, but we're going to do something to tune the elastic ease in that's a little bit more advanced, that'll scale it based on how much of a differential there is in our current height to our new height. But let's just take a look here and take a little victory lap. Our these are the three. These kind of are your three lines to set up any animation, any script-based animation. First, you need to create a clip. That's the dynamic version of a kind of a key track in a sense. It's a little moment. Think of it as like time, something from here to here, and it's going to you're going to add a keyframe of and it's going to the keyframe is going to need two values in it. It's going to need the amount of time you want to get to a new value. And you also need to set the key interpolator. Your default will be, I believe, linear. It's either linear or smooth. I'm sorry for not knowing. I believe it's linear by default. And then you can set it explicitly by this clip, lowercase s, capital K, capital I, interpolator, set key interpolator, and then you pass in a string, so you need the quotation marks on that. Any of those elastic ease in or exponential ease in or so on. So this is great. So you can set it, you can pass in a dynamic value at the moment that you click. And so that value keeps changing, and you get to have all this nice kind of interactivity. Well, exponential ease in. So let's go one step further. Right now we have a dynamic value here, but we don't have a dynamic value here. And I noticed that, working with elastic ease in, I want to sometimes take longer to travel up this distance. For example, if I come over here, I have it, it bounces way out, and then if I have it come to a really high value, it just springs very Looney Tunesy. And I would like to kind of scale that effect so that it's a bit. See, when I do it here, that subtlety's not bad. And maybe I want. What if I take a look if it's like 5? So 5's kind of nice. Five kind of looks like the tide is rolling in at small values. What if I went like 8? And it goes over and it comes back. It's, again, always not that bad at small values. But when I do a big value, it kind of like, it's a little too Looney Tunesy. So what if I want to scale this value? To do that, I need to basically store the current level and I need to store the current water level, and last time's water level. So to do that, I need to create a variable that lives outside of this function that I can access at the beginning of the function, and I can kind of talk to at the end of the function that'll store it. And so what I need is a member variable on this script that lives on the object outside of this press event, this function. It lives outside of this function. So I'm going to set that up in my initialization event. That is the event that fires on init function. And so on init, if I click it, that lives not here down in my object script or on the interactable attribute. It lives up here in the overarching events of terrain. And so I'm going to click on init. I'm going to select terrain here and then click expand events, and there's on init. I'm going to click that. Just for cleanliness sake, I like to, if a init comes in later, I like to cut and paste it up to the top of the script. And so in my initialization, this runs at the very beginning of my, when I press play, and this runs once. And so what I'm going to do is kind of set up these variables. I'm going to say self to be able to, self is the way I'm going to be able to kind of stick a variable onto myself. And I'm going to say self dot, I'm going to say a new watt level. So new water level is going to be new watt lev, and I'm going to set the new watt lev equal to 0. So that's because I've clicked nothing. When I click on something, I'm going to have a new water level now that I can work with. And I'm going to compare my new water level to my old water level. But my old water level, my self dot old watt lev is going to equal, what's it going to equal? Well, it's going to equal my kind of current water level, because when I start comparing these, the old water level is where I am / where I was. So I need to get a hold of the ocean water level here to tell me what is my water level? Where am I starting? So if I start the water level at any point, wherever that happens to be, I want to go and get that and then call that my old water level. So let's see here. So ocean, just like we did down here, dot water level, lowercase w, water, uppercase L, water level. So we're going to store a variable on ourselves called self.oldWaterLevel. It's going to initialize at this value at ocean.waterLevel, whatever the water level happens to be. And our new water level is going to be set to 0 to begin with. And then as soon as we press the terrain, we'll enter this function, at which point we will now compare these two values, and we'll say that our new water level is going to be at that press height. So, and then if the old water level and the new water level are at like a really high level, like if they're a really high differential, like the water's way down here and the new water level, that's old water level, and the new water level's way up here, I want to make it take longer here. So we're going to ultimately end up with some scaled out value in here, and this is let's call this just time, the variable that we're going to stick in here, which is called time to rise. And I'm gonna create a little function over here called time to rise equals. So how are we going to know that there's more time to rise? So time to rise is going to be the differential between these two values. So the time to rise is new water level minus old water level, like the absolute value of those. So if the water level is above me and I'm down here and I subtract it, I'm going to get a negative. If I'm up here and it's down there, I'm going to get a positive, but it doesn't matter. I'm just looking at the overall differential, so I need the absolute value of the difference between these two variables. But I need to set these. So when I press this button, I'm going to basically say at this moment that self.new watt lev is equal to segGetEndPoint.y. And that's the height that I'm clicking on. So now I have my new water level. And what's my old water level? Oh, it happens to be wherever, where the ocean started as we initialized the beginning of this. So ocean.water level is going to be our old water level. Our new water level is going to be the end point of our, the height of where we click. And now time to rise is going to be we're going to say math.abs, which is the absolute value function, and inside of it, we're going to do some subtraction between self.new watt lev minus self.old watt lev. And so old watt lev, new watt lev minus old watt lev, absolute value of that's going to give us our differential, which means that if it's a big value, we're going to take more seconds. So if it's like 20 is the differential, it's going to take 20 seconds to rise. If it's just 1 meter, we're going to do that in 1 second. So that means that if it's farther, it's going to take longer, which is great. So everything should be set except that right at the very end, we need to kind of switch around these values so that we need to kind of make now our current level that we've animated to. That current level that we've animated to that we animate up to, which is going to be our segGetEndPoint.y. This one. We need to make that call that our old water level, so that when we come back into this function on the next press, and we have a new segGetEndPoint.y, we can compare it in here to our old water level, right? So what that means is down here we need to say that self.old watt lev equals self.new watt lev. So we basically say, hey, we want our old thing to be our new thing, so that we can bring it into a new comparison here. So this should set us up to basically, we did all of this initialization function. We found our ocean value. We did this line. So call this set new water level from click, from press location. This is where we get the ocean object. This is do math to understand difference in old versus new water levels, so we can scale animation time. And then this is the animation script. And then obviously in here we've done two things. Time to rise is time to rise scales with difference in old and new water levels, and we animate to press location over that time duration. And then last but not least, no, literally last but not least, we self.old wattlev self equals self.new wattlev. We set up our variables to run anew in a new press event. Our now current water level needs to be assigned to the old water level variable. So there we go. So that should function in a way that scales. And let's say that you want that to be even slower. What you could do is on that script, on the onPress event, you could put an additional scaler in here. Like, let's say, okay, to get 10 meters, we're going to take 10 seconds in an elastic ease-in curve, which means we're going to overshoot and kind of bounce back. What if at 10 meters I want us to take 20 seconds, which means that time to rise times 2 instead of 20. Sorry, instead of in just time to rise. So now it's going a little more slowly. So you could keep tinkering with that level to get it to kind of where you like it. And now it's a little more containable. And there I've clicked way down, and it's taking a much longer time to get to recede because it's scaling with the overall distance. And so that's overshot there, yeah. It's just kind of nice, and I do like the elastic. It's just that you need that scaling to kind of get it not to look Looney Tunesy a little bit. But I do like the overshoot a little bit. You could also put in kind of an if function to know that if it's too close that you would kind of change and scale. Anyway, try different key interpolations, and then obviously this works in VR because it works directly off your lasers. So I will go ahead and just pop in here. Let me rotate the rig around a little bit. Draws normal to the surface, so I'm going to get rid of the X rotation and then go into VR mode, go edit, preferences. Oh wait, do I already have a rig in there? My bad. Use your monoscopic view here. And then let's make sure that my HMD display is visible. And we'll enter. So I can fly over here. Set a level. Swim underneath. Come up all the way to the pit. Here comes the water. So there you go. Kind of a fun and basic one. There's a lot you can do with that kind of terrain-based seg get endpoint. Obvious, one that's pretty straightforward is you could jump the VR rig to that location. That would be a very fundamental teleport to this location, teleport to the terrain right there. And another one is to like place objects. So like yesterday we had a pick an object and then place it. You could also use the exact same script, not exactly the same, but you need to create a transform, create a position animation to animate an object to go from here to there, and go from, have a thing move from a place to a place. So anyway, yeah, a lot to enjoy here. We'll do a